What is good, everyone? It's your girl, Primitiva. In my journey throughout the Pokemon franchise, I've learned that being cool isn't always the best thing. I'm talking, of course, about the Ice typing, which hasn't been dealt the best hand. More like a smelly, unwashed hand that's covered in sweat, something you definitely do not want to shake. Now, if Ice typing is your favorite typing, then that's cool. Literally. While Ice is good as an offensive type, hitting Grass, Dragon, Flying, and Ground types all pretty well, it's much better to use Ice-type moves instead of Ice-type Pokemon themselves, because of the type's extremely lacking defensive capabilities. To start off with, it's weak to Fighting, Fire, Rock, and Steel. And on top of that, being weak to Stealth Rock, which is never a good thing. But honestly, I feel like they should just nerf Stealth Rock, but that's a video for another time. But wait, doesn't Ice have one resistance? That's right, it's resistant to its own type. That's it. So what can be done to make this type better? Well, keep watching and you'll find out. Before getting into any weakness changes, I think an Ice type entry hazard would be very helpful considering how many Pokemon are weak to Ice. And I will call this move Stalactites. The user hurls levitating stalactites above the opponent's field of view. Opposing Pokemon that switch into battle get hurt by the sharp icicles falling down on them. These are the Pokemon that I think should be blessed with this move: Avalugg, Abomasnow, Aurorus, Glalie, Glaceon, Mamoswine, and finally, Vanillux. That way, lower tier Pokemon could potentially see higher tiers, or higher rankings in their own tier. Except of course Mamoswine, because it's already in the underused tier. But just imagine setting up both Stealth Rocks and Stalactites. Talk about a headache for your opponent. Alright, now it's time to get into immunities, resistances, and advantages. Since Ice cannot freeze Ice even more, it makes no sense to me that you can even hit Ice with Ice. It really makes no sense that an Ice Beam should do any damage to a Pokemon that's already super cold. So I think a full immunity to its own typing is definitely something that should be done. This will be the first time any type resists its own type, but I definitely think it makes the most sense for Ice. Next up is resistances. Ice previously resisted just Ice, but what I had in mind is it resisting not one type, but 4 instead. The most obvious one I think that Ice should resist is Water, because when water gets too close to something cold, it just freezes over time. So when a Water move gets too close to an Ice type, I think it should just make sense that the move becomes weakened because of the coldness the Pokemon is giving off. Ground is another type that Ice should definitely resist. Now, this one has a good logical reason, but I also wanted to put it in because Earthquake is really powerful, and one can sweep with it pretty easily. So I wanted to nerf ground types a little bit, as well as boosting Ice types. Now, the logical reason Ice is super effective against ground, and grass as well for that matter, is because if the ground freezes, it makes it harder for plants to grow and life to sprout. Ice can also cause a thing called permafrost in the ground, in places where it's really cold, where the underground area never truly melts. Since Ice types have full control of, well, Ice, it should make sense that ground moves have a harder time hitting them. So for example, if a Pokemon tries to use a ground move on an Ice type, the move should automatically do less because the ground itself has a hard time not being frozen because of all the coldness Ice types radiate, and therefore Ice should resist ground. I'm sure many people agree with me when I say that Fairy types need at least a tiny nerf. But what nerf, you may ask? Well, Ice types resisting Fairy types. But what could be the logical reasoning behind Ice types resisting Fairy types? Well, Fairy types may not be the Light type everyone's been wanting to see for decades, but it sure does act like it. And what does Light, and therefore Fairy, represent? Life. And what snuffs out life, or at least most life? Freezing temperatures. So, Ice type. So it makes sense to me that powers that come from life wouldn't have much effect in the cold. Finally, there's one more typing I had in mind. This one takes a bit of imagination and also some science. I'm talking about the electric type. So electricity is good against water because water is a good conductor. However, the interesting thing about that is that only water with minerals in it is a good conductor. Pure water is a terrible conductor. So instead of water being weak to electricity, maybe rock should be instead. But you want to know what's another great conductor? Steel. So, shouldn't steel be weak to electricity too? I'm only assuming rock and steel type aren't because electric type is already good enough. More and it would just become too OP. And the likely reason that water is weak to electric is likely because it just needed another weakness that wasn't just grass. Getting back to the main topic, ice, on the other hand, is a terrible conductor because you see the ions, such as charged molecules and atoms, they are mobile in water, and when water is frozen, it becomes ice, and therefore a solid. So it just doesn't work as good anymore. With electricity hitting already a lot in the metagame, I think having ice resisted will give electricity a small nerf while also giving ice a small buff, balancing potentially the metagame a little bit more. Finally, I also think that ice should be super effective on 2 more types. First is water because, well, water literally becomes ice when it's cold, so I think that's a fairly logical reason. And also, water is really good in the metagame. I mean, we have the term bulky water for a reason, so it could definitely use a tiny nerf in my opinion. And the second one is Fairy, because again, the cold snuffs out life, and Fairy just needs a small nerf. It's a basic explanation, but hey, it just works. So yeah, with these ideas, I'm certain Ice-type would be a whole lot better. I don't think it'll be broken, because there's already loads of types out there that resist a whole lot, so Ice getting a well-needed buff wouldn't ruin the metagame. It's still weak to Rock, and therefore Stealth Rocks, along with Fighting and Steel, which are both very prevalent in the metagame, so it'll obviously still have weaknesses, but hey, I just wanted to balance the poor type so it'll have a chance to do more. Because a lot of Ice-type Pokemon in design look amazing and are fun to use, so it's really unfair that most just aren't that good. And I really hope Game Freak will actually give Ice some sort of boost in Sword and Shield, because if I had to choose one type to get a buff, it would definitely be Ice, and I think most people can agree with me on that. Anyway, what do you think? Do you agree or disagree with my points? Do you yourself have some ideas how to make Ice types better? Please comment down below. Be sure to show support by hitting that like button and sharing the video with friends. And be sure to subscribe for more content like this in the future. And ring that little bell, or else you might not be able to see my videos pop up when I upload them, and that'd be a real shame. Also, if you want to join the official Prima Diva Discord, there's a link in the description. I also have a Patreon, in case you want to help me support the channel even more. There's some pretty sweet bonuses on there for a pretty low price, so go check it out. But with that being said, I hope you all will have a fantastic day, night, or morning, and as always, take care.